The Kings close out a tumultuous first half of the season in Nashville. There is good news for the Kings going into this game. That's next and more here on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love for you to leave us a positive comment on Apple Podcasts if you're a fan of the show, and we are on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. I'm also co-host of the Puck Podcast. It's a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 17 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Well, the LA Kings are back in action for one final time before the All-Star break. They're in Music City to take on the Nashville Predators, and then it's off for 9 days. And I think I speak for most of us when I say I think we could all use a little break from this team right now. Next week, we're going to take an in-depth look on the past 48 games of the LA Kings and several other things going on with the team. So this show is definitely not taking a break, but the Kings will be off for a little while. And we hope that this break, that they can use it to hit the reset button and come back for a strong second half of the season and, of course, a playoff push. But until then, the Kings are looking for a win tonight, something they haven't had much of recently. They come into this game against the Nashville Predators with a record of 22-15-10. They're in fourth place in the Pacific Division, seventh place in the Western Conference, and 15th in the NHL with 54 points. LA is 14-6-4 on the road this year. They are coming off a 4-3 overtime loss to the Blues in St. Louis on Sunday. The Nashville Predators, very similar record to the LA Kings, 26-22-2, so not as many regulation or overtime losses, but they're in fifth place in the Central Division, ninth place in the Western Conference, and 17th place in the NHL with 54 points, just like the LA Kings. Predators are 13-12-0 at home, coming off a 4-3 overtime loss in Ottawa against the Senators in their last game this past Monday. Kings are still 16th in the NHL in goals scored per game at 3.13. They're fifth in the NHL in goals allowed per game at 2.66. For the Predators, they're 18th in the NHL in goals scored per game, 2.98. They're 18th in the league in goals allowed per game at 3.12. Kings are 16th in the NHL on the power play at 21.3%, but number one on the penalty kill at 87%. Nashville 20th on the power play, 19.1%, 27th on the penalty kill at 76.4%. So certainly appears special teams could be a key tonight for the Kings as they have the advantage, at least statistically, over the season than Nashville. Individually, the Kings are led in points by Adrian Kempe, 43 points. He's got 17 goals and 26 assists. Trevor Moore is the Kings' leading goal scorer heading into this final game before the All-Star break. He's got 21 goals. For the Nashville Predators, one man leads them in points and goals. That is Philip Forsberg with 50 points and 23 goals. Some other standout players for Nashville, Roman Josi is a fine offensive defenseman for them. Ryan O'Reilly, a guy they picked up in the offseason, a solid two-way centerman that can do a lot of good things as well. And we'll talk about their goaltender, Juuse Saros, in just a moment. Likely some of the names you will hear as key players coming up tonight for the Nashville Predators against the LA Kings. As for the two netminders, the Kings will be starting David Rittich. We talked about on Tuesday's show. If you missed it, go back and check that out. But Cam Talbot, the Kings' lone all-star representative, is really a disaster right now. 0-7-3 in his last 10 starts. He really needs the all-star break to reset and hopefully refocus and get back on track for the second half. But Rittich has been very respectable since being called up for the injured Phoenix Copley, going 4-1-3, a 2.09 goals against average and a 920 save percentage. There's no doubt that right now, David Rittich is the best option in net for the LA Kings. They'll be going up against a very solid netminder in UC Saros. He checks in with a record of 19, 18, and 2, 2.94 goals against average, and a 903 save percentage. Those aren't typical of his numbers. He's having a bit of an off year, but still, when he's on his game, UC Saros is one of the better goaltenders in the NHL. This is the second of two meetings between the Kings and the Predators. The Predators beat LA in Los Angeles on January the 18th. 2-1 was the final. Same goalie matchup was featured in that one as well. All the goals scored in that 2-1 game were in the second period. Drew Doughty had the Kings' lone goal on the power play. The two teams will match up one more time later in the second half of the season. As for the LA Kings lineup for tonight, there is a bit of a change from the last game, and there's a good reason why, and that's because Quinton Byfield is expected to be back in the lineup for this game. Q missing the last two games due to an illness, and since he will be back on that top line on the left wing with Andrei Kopitar and Adrian Kempe, that will have a bit of a domino effect on the Kings lineup. That will mean that Alex Laferriere, who filled in very nicely for Byfield for those two games that he was out, will move back down to the left wing on the third line with Pierre Dubois and Jarrett Anderson-Dolan. And that means that Carl Grundstrom, who was on that line in the last game, will likely drop down to the fourth line. But there is some issue or some speculation on exactly what that fourth line is going to look like. I hope and expect Alex Turcotte will get another start at center on that fourth line. We'll see who his wingers are. Will it be Grundstrom? Will Trevor Lewis be there? Will it be Arthur Kaliyev? We'll have to wait and see. But again, hopefully Alex Turcotte gets another shot to show what he could do. I thought he had a pretty good game in his first outing of the season against the Blues, and would like to see him get some more ice time. The Kings insider and friend of the show, Zach Dooley, did report that Trevor Lewis missed practice on Tuesday for an unknown reason, but he did skate this morning, so not sure if he'll be in the lineup or not. Not sure if he's 100% healthy or not. Maybe it's a game time decision, but not exactly sure what that fourth line is going to look like. But again, hopefully Alex Turcotte is in there for the LA Kings. Defensively, I think we're going to see Brandt Clark back on that third pairing on the right side. It was Jordan Spence in that spot in the last game against St. Louis, so it would stand to reason that it would be Clark in tonight as the Kings are going with that rotation between the two young defensemen. And some were wondering about Kevin Fiala. Would he be benched for this game after his interesting effort against St. Louis? Overall, he didn't play a bad game, but he had two glaring bad moments. One was a line change that he took that was ill-advised. It led to the Blues getting a big goal, and then he had a late dumb penalty late in the game that gave the Blues a chance to win it in regulation. Fortunately, the Kings penalty kill came through, and that didn't happen. But there was some speculation because Fiala was benched for the end of that game if he might be benched for this game. But it does not look like that is going to happen. And frankly, I'm okay with that. I know you want to send a message to players at times that certain things are unacceptable. Hopefully just the benching at the end of the game gets the message across, because despite some of the issues that Kevin Fiala has, he is still a dynamic, creative, offensive driving type of a player. The Kings need him in the lineup. And so we'll see. It looks like he is going to play tonight. And I think that is the right call. So it looks like that's your lineup for the most part for the LA Kings. Again, we're not sure about Brandt Clark in or out. We're not sure about what the rotation could be on that fourth line, but Quinton Byfield back in the lineup for the LA Kings, and good to see Q back in. He's had a great first half of the season, and hopefully he can end the first half on a high note, maybe get a goal, do something to help the Kings get a victory tonight. So that does set up the Kings' final game before the All-Star break. Is this the final game for head coach Todd McClellan? Well, unless the Kings absolutely get their doors blown off, I don't think so. But we'll talk about part of the reason why maybe the Kings have been so reluctant to make a coaching change. We'll do that next year on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. I know we come to sports to escape some of the more crazy realities of real life, but can we talk for a minute about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. This is scary, and I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if my wife or one of my loved ones got sick while a supply chain issue kept them from getting life-saving medications that they needed. Thankfully, will be okay because of a Jase case from Jase Medical. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, skin infections, among others. This stuff could happen to any of us. So visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It'll be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It has never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jasemedical.com and use the offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. And happy Super Bowl to all of you that celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, the Super Bowl is all about securing that comfortable seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite snacks, and sometimes placing a few bets to make things a little more interesting. It's basically a sports holiday, and you can enjoy the game even more by having some fun with a bet or two. FanDuel has so many ways that you can end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win the Super Bowl, but FanDuel also lets you bet on which players can score touchdowns, how many points are going to be scored, and so much more. New customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So we know the Kings have been reluctant to make a coaching change. I'm still trying to figure out exactly why. I get not wanting to do it, and I get wanting the first option to be for the players to dig themselves out of a hole that they put themselves in. And there's certainly benefits to that, and it happens to every team, ups and downs. But the way the Kings have been sliding, it does seem way past time for a coaching change to me, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels that way. Now, I've seen reports that Kings forward Viktor Arvidsson is very close to being back, like first game after the All-Star break being back. Now, if that is the case, that is sooner than I anticipated and sooner than some of the reports that I had seen about him coming back. Obviously, this hasn't been confirmed by the Kings, but if Viktor Arvidsson is coming back right after the break instead of weeks after the break, like I had heard, I guess I could understand wanting to see what kind of impact he could have with this team. The plan being, the Kings hit the reset button after the 9 days off, get Arvidsson back, and then see how the team responds. And if that doesn't work, then maybe they decide to make a coaching change. Now, do I think that Viktor Arvidsson returning could be a significant impact with the LA Kings? I would say yes. Not only in the depth of the team, adding scoring, adding punch on the power play, but is he the missing puzzle piece to cure all the woes that the LA Kings have right now? I'm not sure about that. I would like to think so, but at this point, it's pretty hard to figure out exactly what's going on with the LA Kings. If Arvidsson does return and he turns out to be that important, then GM Rob Blake better figure out a way to re-sign him this offseason because he's clearly the most valuable player on the team. When I think about the Kings for the stretch run after the All-Star break, I look at the teams they're competing with for a playoff spot. I got to believe they're better than teams like the Predators and the Blues, maybe the Kraken and the Coyotes. Just the roster the Kings have, they should be better than those teams, right? I would think so. And then you add Viktor Arvidsson on top of that. That roster is good enough to be a playoff team, that's for sure. So I don't know if that's the reason why the Kings are waiting to see what goes on with Viktor Arvidsson. Is he, in fact, going to be ready to go right after the All-Star break? That would be a nice boost to come out of that break. And like I said, hopefully the players can hit that reset and get going with the second half. But clearly the second half of the season is going to be huge for the LA Kings. They can't continue going on this trajectory that they're going on and expect to make the playoffs. That's obvious. Something's got to change soon. Will it be Viktor Arvidsson making that change, helping things out? We shall see. So I got an email, by the way, from our friends over with the LA Kings. Perhaps you did too. It reads in part, Kings fans, join us Thursday, February 8th for our online open house event. It is your chance to view and select the best available seats for the 2024-25 season before they go on sale to the general public. Become a season ticket member to receive Significant savings on individual ticket prices, the best seat locations, flexible payment plan options, Team LA store discounts, priority playoff access, and more. Plus, if you secure the remainder of the 2023-24 season, you'll receive even greater savings for the 2024-25 season. RSVP now. Well, they say timing is everything, and I'm not sure who they are, but it's an old saying, and you may have heard it before. You want a good example of good timing? I've mentioned on the show before that my wife is a diehard LA Chargers fan. She's been a season ticket holder for over 25 years. They just hired a new coach, Jim Harbaugh. Now, if you don't know anything about football, it's fine. It's a big deal. To hire this coach is a really big deal for the Chargers, who never won a Super Bowl and are looking for anything to give optimism to their fans after a tough season. And now is a good time, if you're the Chargers organization, to send out that email saying, hey, Chargers fans, now is a great time to get in on season tickets for next year. We've got this great new coach. It's a new era, blah, blah, blah. That's good timing. For the LA Kings to send out this email now to me and you and other Kings fans to get in on season tickets for next year while the team is a complete disaster. Not great timing, I would say. Maybe somebody should have said, hey, let's wait till after the All-Star break to send out this email or something. It just, I'm sure these things are planned way in advance, and I'm sure they've done research that there's a certain time where you need to send these things out, I guess. But all I can say is when I clicked on that in my email inbox, I kind of rolled my eyes and laughed. Because, I mean, let's be honest. There's a chance the Kings miss the playoffs. And if that happens, it's hard to believe that there wouldn't be significant changes to the LA Kings organization, a new GM, a new head coach, who knows what else. And you bring in new people to run a team. Who knows what they want to do with the roster? I mean, look, if they miss the playoffs, it's conceivable that they could look to kind of blow this team up. I'm not waving the white flag on this season. I'm not. And I really do in my heart believe that the talent on the Kings roster is good enough for them to get into the playoffs. And then who knows what happens? We saw it in 2012 when the Kings were an 8 seed. Nobody saw that coming. They went on to win the Stanley Cup. And last season, if you watch the NHL, the Florida Panthers totally backed their way into the playoffs. They went all the way to the Stanley Cup final. They didn't win it, but they went to the final. So we know, if you've paid attention to the NHL, the playoffs are a completely different animal. I get it right now. If you're a Kings fan, are you optimistic that this team can do anything in the playoffs? No, but things change between now and the end of the season. Maybe they get on track. Maybe they get it going. But again, we're talking about them asking you as a person to invest your hard-earned money into this team. And I say you got to earn it. And right now, the Kings aren't earning that. And I know I'm a media guy. I get a credential. I get to go to the Kings games for free. But I am I married into being a season ticket holder with the Chargers. So I understand what it's like to set aside a certain chunk of money to invest in a sports team every year. So, and that's not something that people should take lightly. And organizations certainly shouldn't take that lightly as well. So, I don't know if you saw that email. I don't know if your reaction was the same as mine, but making that investment right now in this LA Kings team, from what we've seen so far, I would advise you not to make that investment, quite frankly, but hopefully that'll change. Hopefully things get going in the right direction. And hopefully we look forward to the rest of this season, the postseason, and next season as well. Let's check in on where the Kings are right now in the standings, in that playoff picture. I mentioned at the very top, good news for the Kings, I guess. We'll check in on that next year on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, did you have a New Year's resolution? Was it to lose weight? Was it to eat healthier? Was it to find better ways to use your time? Well, let me tell you about Factor. It's a ready-to-eat meal delivery that takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success in the new year. Skip the grocery stores, the prep work, the cooking fatigue. Instead, get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door with over 35 meals to choose from per week, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan plus veggie, and more. Plus, over 55 weekly add-ons. You'll have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to kick off your resolutions. Stress less over meal times in the new year. Factor's no prep, no mess meals, free up time otherwise spent shopping, cooking, and cleaning up. No more wasting time in the kitchen. Factor is cheaper and way more delicious than takeout. Get chef-crafted, restaurant-quality meals delivered right to your door. They're ready to heat up and eat in just 2 minutes, which means more time for you. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 and use the code LockedOnNHL50 to get 50% off. That is code LockedOnNHL50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 to get 50% off. Well, the LA Kings played their final game before the All-Star break in Nashville against the Predators, a playoff spot not on the line, but still an important game for both teams, especially the Predators. 4:30 p.m. Pacific time tonight. Catch every moment of the hometown broadcast of your LA Kings with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search LA Kings. And by the way, that is a TNT game. That is a nationally broadcast game. It is not a local broadcast on Bally Sports. So if you have TNT, that's where you can find the Kings tonight. Let us check in on the standings in the Pacific Division and in the Western Conference playoff race. And I said at the top, I guess good news. If you felt like the Kings needed to lose this game to make a coaching change, if you were rooting for that, we talked about that earlier in the week. If you're one of those Kings fans, well, I guess I have bad news for you. The LA Kings will be in a playoff spot regardless of what happens tonight in the game against Nashville. At the All-Star break, the Kings will be holding one of the two wildcard spots. That's because the Columbus Blue Jackets surprised the St. Louis Blues last night with a 1-0 victory in the final game for St. Louis before the All-Star break. I didn't see that coming. So going into today's game in Nashville for LA, the Kings have 54 points, the Blues have 54 points, and the Predators, tonight's opponent, also with 54 points. So that's three teams battling for two wildcard spots. Right now, the Kings have the number one spot because they have a better points percentage than both St. Louis and Nashville. They played fewer games than both teams. And even after tonight's game, they will also have still played fewer games than the Nashville Predators. So obviously, St. Louis has played their final game before the break. They're not going to be able to improve on their 54 points. So even if the Kings lose tonight in regulation, they will still have the tiebreaker over St. Louis. So at the very least, the Kings will have the number two wildcard spot. If the Predators win tonight against the Kings in either regulation and or overtime or shootout, or even if the Predators lose in overtime or shootout, they will have 55 points. If they lose in overtime or shootout, if they win, they'll have 56 points. So they will, unless they lose in regulation, Nashville will overtake the Kings and the Blues and have that number one wildcard spot, again, with a win or a regulation or overtime loss. The Kings, regardless, are in a wildcard spot. If they win tonight, LA will have the number one wildcard spot. If they lose tonight, even in a shootout or regulation, then they will have the number two wildcard spot. So again, the Kings at the All-Star break will be in a playoff position. If the playoffs did start today, the Kings would be, like I said, the number one wildcard spot, and they would face the Colorado Avalanche in the first round of the playoffs. If the Kings lose tonight to the Predators, they would be the number two wildcard team, and that would put them against the Vancouver Canucks in the first round of the playoffs. So we'll see how it goes tonight for the LA Kings. All right, for you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, as I mentioned, this is the final game, the final day before the All-Star break, but this show does not take All-Star breaks. We will have shows every day for you the rest of this week, obviously, and all of next week, even though we won't have Kings games. We have not had any interviews in a while. You may have noticed that. It's not because we're tired of doing interviews. It's because we're going to have a lot of interviews coming up next week. I would say at least 3 interviews coming up next week to get some of our friends of the show on to give us their perspective on the first half of the LA Kings and talk about the second half, talk about all kinds of things regarding the Kings. And we're going to have some special features as well. We're also going to look at the Kings farm system, their prospects, how they're doing so far at this point of the season. We're going to get into the whole PL Dubois controversy, if you will. How much of the blame is on his shoulders for what's going on with the LA Kings. We're going to talk about Viktor Arvidsson and where he would fit in the lineup if he does return soon after the All-Star break. Lots of things to talk about coming up next week, and we'll have some special interviews, like I said, as well for next week's show during the All-Star break. But for you everydayers, like I said, coming up on tomorrow's show, obviously we will recap completely the Kings and the Predators, the final game before the All-Star break. And then, of course, on Friday, don't forget we have another Kings fan feedback show, your chance to talk about everything going on with the LA Kings through the first half of the season, what you think for the second half, and anything else that's on your mind. The email address to get in on that is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. We would love for you to also leave your comments on the YouTube shows as well in the comment section, and stay interactive with the show on social media, X, Twitter, and Instagram at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you, as always, for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. And as always, go Kings, go.